Professor William E. Cantrell, Round Rock, Texas. Dear brother, I thought that as I had nothing to do at present, I would write you a few lines to let you know that at this stage of the act, I am still on stage. I was quite well amused over your letter wherein you stated that you and Nita had ridden all day in the Dodge to see one cannon on a flat car and then said, it was well worth the trip. I had been in service a little over a year, and the time I was in the States, I had very little to tell you that was really interesting. But now I believe I could command your attention for some little time and then not be fully started on the report of my career. Could you imagine yourself starting out of the bottom of the lower deck of a ship and hearing the constant ring of alarm which seemed to say a sub-battle, and after a long watchful "stand to," ready to jump overboard with the raft, finally getting orders to down in your hole and go to bed, for all was safe for a few minutes? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself quietly marching through a flat and suddenly be alarmed by a rolling cloud and the screaming voice of someone saying, "Gas!" and after a period of perfect still and quiet, hear a faint but muttered voice say, "You may remove the masks"? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself riding on a truck down the road, seeing horses, houses, men, cannon, and automobiles torn to pieces with cannon fire, and suddenly there would be a whizzing sound and ended with a heavy thump and jar similar to thunder and trash, litter, etc. falling all around you? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself walking over a hill and by accident walk too near the graves of some poor soldier and see the tag of your brother's pupil nailed to a pine cross over the grave? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself traveling through a barrage into a town to complete orders and on your way past the infantry line and see in the front of you the Dutch? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine going into town after the Dutch and find fire in the stoves and potatoes cooking on that fire? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself sitting by a fireplace in a vacated town where scarcely a room was left standing, writing on a typewriter, and suddenly some queer explosion in the fireplace goes off and shoots a hole in the side of the box you were using as a typewriter table? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine walking through a town where every building had been utterly destroyed by shell fire and shells are still falling? It was well worth the trip. Could you imagine yourself going through all of the above and more and find yourself sitting at a beautiful feast with the best of friends, eating the best of food, and someone stepping into the room in the garb of a captain who says, "Boys, official reports virtually substantiate peace is on"? It was well worth the trip. Someone said, "War is hell." Now, we thought training was hell, but that Camp Bowie war was a good one. Sherman didn't have the words to tell the truth as to what war was or is. I merely mentioned some of the things that a poor soldier, although not in the infantry, has to go through with, so you can see that life is a speculation, and so those that remained in the land of people can be truly grateful for the privilege. See? I have not fully decided what I shall do when I return, but I am of the opinion that I will still work for Uncle Sam. But this does not particularly mean that I'm going to join the infantry and make another expedition to a foreign country and look for dangerous zones. I want you to remember, this old gray mare is not what she used to be. See? Drop me a line or two once in a while and let me know if the influenza got you or not. No news to write at the 11th hour, 11th day, and 11th month of this year, only that we hit him. Kaiser. 3 naturals and I am your brother. Corporal Isaac B. Cantrell, Company B, 111th Military Police, AEF APO 796.